one national media analyst may not have the worst of all ideas for a college football playoff to include the G5. Let's talk about it next on Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. All right, we'll get to the Southern Miss second half meltdown against Western Kentucky, and then maybe we talk about what now moving forward, because we're going to get to the what now probably sooner rather than later in terms of the G5. Okay. Did see Greg McElroy post, may have been on his own show, about what was an idea to include the G5. Now, the problem is what he first states is he's looking out for the G5, and he thinks that everyone wants the G5 to be included. That may be just to avoid the eventual lawsuit, okay? Which the lawsuit would probably take a couple of years anyways, I would presume, all right? Nonetheless, and we're talking about the lawsuit where the G5 has to sue the Power Four from excluding them in the college football playoff. Okay. So he says most of us, we all want the G5 in there. No, that's not the case. Paul Finebaum doesn't want the G5 in there. Josh Pate doesn't want the G5 in there. Bud Elliott doesn't want the G5 in there. One of the Oregon beat writers doesn't want the G5 in there. I don't know anybody outside of Greg McElroy stating it that wants a G5 in there. Those others may take him because they want to avoid the lawsuit, but it feels like Greg McElroy has a pretty legit idea. And the reason it's not going to probably go over that well is because percentage-wise, it's going to limit the G5. All right. And I do believe the way it's set up now, you will get a G5 team beating a Power 4 team because you will, because the way it's set up now, and it's going to change with McElroy's idea, should it go that way, is they are playing the fifth best team. They're not playing an undefeated team. They're not playing the number one team. They're playing the fifth team. And if the fifth team has an off day, or the sixth team, as the case was, has an off day, maybe they win. All right. Going to be really tough to go beat the number one team on the road. I also believe, I've also said this, I think 2 rounds of playoffs need to be on campus because we do want to see those tough guys from the South playing cold temperatures. And then we want to hear them all crying about it, how this game should be in a dome because we should take the elements out of it, sort of like the Super Bowl. All right. But that's not what I want. I want to see the SEC play in the North, in the cold. That's what I want to see. All right. Now, fortunately, if it's dangerously cold, that's a problem for the fans and the players for that fact of the matter. These are kids, still college kids. But I would want to see, let's see them play in the cold in January. All right. Where it may not be fair totally to the SEC team, but I'm not worried about that. If you're playing on the road, that means you should have had a better season, win more games. All right. Having said that, so Greg McElroy put this idea out there. You expand to 16 teams, and I'd have to go back and listen, but a G5 team is getting in, however that works, and they are the 16th seed. All right. They play the number one seed. He also said no more buys. Everyone's playing, well, not everybody, but the 2 teams playing in the championship are going to play 4 games, right? 16, 8, 4, 2. All right. So his idea was maybe it's the highest ranked G5 team. All right. Maybe that's it. Whatever it was, he had him 16th. All right. You do add 4 more teams, which I think is coming. Thought we're supposed to get 14, but we'll see. So the G5 team, I guess, regardless, maybe he has to go into more details because Cincinnati would have been higher than that a few years ago, is going to be the 16th seed. They have to play the number one seed. So now with no more buys, now all of a sudden those conference championships do mean something, according to Greg, because now, in essence, we're looking for that cakewalk in that first game. It's not the worst of all ideas. I understand that the Power 4 teams are getting 3 more spots, and the G5 technically losing a spot, although they only got the second spot because the ACC screwed up. I understand that's not the G5's problem, but they're going to correct it, and they are correcting it already for next year. I don't have a problem with what McElroy is stating. It's going to be really hard, if not virtually impossible, without a major injury during the game, for example, the quarterback. All right. But heck, didn't we see Georgia with a backup quarterback? Didn't they beat Alabama? Didn't that happen? So I don't have a problem with that. I hate it that we have to sort of take it, but you could have nothing or wait for that to happen. And you may come to an agreement that this is the case. Now, what happens if, I don't know where JMU would have been ranked. You can go through those weekends. Maybe would they have dropped if they, a couple spots, if they got past Georgia State 14-7 like they did. But again, if they beat Louisville, all right, and then Louisville beat Miami, which is what happened. Does JMU pop in at 24-25 the week they beat Louisville? And then, again, all these teams are playing each other. JMU's winning. They're just going to go up. How far do they go? I'm not going to be at 5, but they'd probably be somewhere around 10-12. Yeah. So in McElroy's idea, do they get a 10th seed or are they automatically the 16th seed? That's the only thing I'd be concerned about. All right. And again, we're only talking about, 20 or 30 programs on a regular basis, right? I was on a podcast. Go look what, and I kept on mixing up Indiana and Alabama because they're playing each other. But go look what Indiana did to the Big Ten. Outside of Penn State and Ohio State, they ran roughshod over the Big Ten. Illinois, Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin. Now, these are not great teams in the Big Ten. I understand that. I believe you me, I understand that. Nonetheless, they're in the Big Ten. Then go look what ODU did with Indiana. Old Dominion lost 27-14. Obviously the Penn State score is the closest that Indiana dealt with, and winning it only by an inch or two. But my goodness, Indiana rolled over the Big Ten. They rolled over the Big Ten. All right. 63-10 over Illinois. Illinois was 9th at the time. Little trouble with Iowa, 20-15. Beat Michigan State 38-13. UCLA 56-6. Maryland 55-10. Obviously squeaked past Penn State. Wisconsin 31-7. Purdue 56-3, and hung on to win 13-10 over Ohio State. Old Dominion lost 27-14. They play close, and someone's got to explain to me on why a Tennessee close game or a Tennessee blowout is not the same thing as a JMU blowout. All right, and is it a blowout because of what the game was for the most part, or what the end of the score was? Because again, they covered the 20-point spread. I'm not going to poo-poo that. And the people who are pissed about it are the people who bet on Oregon. All right. So what do you guys think? Put the G5 in. They get the 16th seed, and then they got to play the number 1 seed. So now the teams fighting for that number 1 seed have a reason to fight for the number 1 seed. At least in their mind, they get an easy game playing the G5 compared to playing the P4. All right. Let me know what you think. All right. Season did not finish up strong for Southern Miss. We'll talk a little bit about the meltdown. And at 7-6, was it a successful season? Talk about it next, right after I tell you about FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, the momentum flips over a turnover, or the Ravens coach doesn't play his star running back, who the Patriots could not stop. FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked in every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. The game moving too fast for John Harbaugh? Well, I'm a Patriots fan. What was that? I mean, I guess I should say thank you. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt. Your teams every day. All right, Southern Miss falls to Western Kentucky in the New Orleans Bowl, 27-16, and talk about the tale of two halves. 13-6 at halftime, and Southern Miss dominating. Even got a turnover. Yardage was 265 to 84. Not so much in the second half. Holy cow. 338, not total for the game, but just in the second half for Western Kentucky. 338 in the second half to just 112 for Southern Miss. And yet, Western Kentucky had 3 turnovers, although one was, I think, inside their 5. Or inside Southern Miss's 5, so that didn't go anywhere. But just a complete difference in score, as it was 13-6 at half. Western Kentucky changes quarterbacks, and they go on and beat Southern Miss in the second half 21-3 and win 27-16. All right. Not great. All right. We can take away that 4-2-5 defense. That is awful. And a great example of that is late in the ball game, 3rd and 11. Southern Miss is rushing 4. Linebackers in the corners drop back, about a 9 or 10-yard pass, caught, run for 2 or 3 more yards, first down. Basically the end of the game. Next play was a long touchdown run that was the end of the game. We're going to sit back on 3rd and 11 with the game on the line and let the quarterback sit there and throw and just sit there in the pocket. They even stunted and doing twists. They didn't blitz. Whoever came up with that 4-2-5 or that 3-3-5, I hate those defenses. I guess you could use it for maybe, if you want to use it for most of the game or your base defense, okay. But sometimes you got to change it up. You got to give them a different look. That was bad. So not a great showing by Southern Miss. And so now comes the bigger question, was it a successful season? We went from 1-11 to 7-6. The problem is 4 straight losses. Went from 1-11 to 7-2, then to 7-6. So it'll be interesting to see what Coach Anderson says, because that's not a great way to finish the season. I don't mind the coaching search process. I like the continuity of it. It was working for a half, and then they didn't make the change in the second half. And that's a problem. All right. You can use that as a motivation, which I'm sure Charles Huff used 1-11 for a motivation all offseason. Now you can use this as motivation, I guess. It would have been nice to end on a high note. Get the new coaching staff off on a good note. Send the guys who came in and changed the culture. Get them going off on a high note, even if they are moving on to Memphis. Memphis announced that none of the coaches are coming back. Goodness. I don't know if that's enough to Arkansas or Huff doesn't want them, but holy cow. Usually you do get a little bit of institutional knowledge that someone's coming back, but nobody's coming back. And so that just a win would have taken the bitterness of the 3-game losing streak out of their mouths and said, all right, well, we didn't finish great, But we finished with a bowl win, and we went 8-6, 7 more wins than the year before. Now it's 6 more wins, still impressive, but boy, just fell flat on their faces at the end. And even got 3 turnovers. Braxton did throw an interception, but that was late. That didn't have anything to do with the outcome of the game. All right, that was at the end. But they could not take advantage of those turnovers, which they've had, well, through the first 9 ball games, and certainly in their 7 wins. You can go back and check how many turnovers they got in their games that they didn't get any turnovers, because it was probably not a heck of a lot. I think we've been through that, right? They had like a 21. They had 21 interceptions, right? But they had a huge turnover difference. And, well, let's see. Against Texas State, they had in fact, they had 3 turnovers. Texas State didn't have any. So that's -3 on that. South Alabama, they had 1, and South Alabama didn't have any. So they are -4 in those 2 ball games. Against Troy, they each had 1. So Southern Miss in those 3 losses had 5 turnovers to 1 turnover for the opponent. Now, oddly enough, they did get 3 turnovers from Western Kentucky, and they had 1. So they had 6 turnovers to 3 in the final 4 ball games. And so they were a -3 turnover ratio. And that's why they lost 4 in a row. All right. That's why they lost 4 in a row. We'll see if that defense changes. We'll see who the quarterback is. We'll see now who may or may not be going in the transfer portal. We'll see that. That's always going to be a nice Christmas present, because that's going to come out here in the next day or 2. And so we'll update that as we go along. All right. I do want to talk about what now for the G5, because it feels like the Power 4 has their voices. We need a G5 voice. All right. I don't know who that's going to be. Talk about that. You know what? After I thank you guys. We're having a record month. We are having a record month. We're going to eclipse 6 figures in total views for the first time ever. And just to make sure in a month, just to make sure to understand how much this has grown. All right. And we are the G5 to the Power 4. The numbers that some of my colleagues are putting up, can't compete with, and they do a great job. But we doubled it from 23 to 24. We doubled it. I am about from 23 to now is about 7.5 times. From 24 to 25, about 3.5 times. This channel has grown so much and continues to grow. And from the bottom of my heart, I do appreciate it. We're getting more people in because we're talking bigger picture than just the Sun Belt. So I do appreciate that. Thank you all so much. Don't forget about that audio podcast, Apple and Spotify as well. We're just having a great month, and we will hopefully continue to carry that into the new year. We only got about 7 weeks before college baseball season starts, so we can have some fun with that. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. We're talking here on, where does the G5 go from here? And I saw this tweet from a couple of G5 ADs. You had Matt Roan, and he was quote tweeting Jeremy Dickey, who is the AD of Boise State. All right. And Jeremy Dickey, quoted, everything that I've said, right? Danny Cannell, but at the same time, it's crystal clear the best outcome for everyone is to have a Group 5 playoff. Yada, yada, yada. Joe Klatt, I generally feel bad for these JMU players. Blah, 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 blah. Nick Saban, look, would we allow the winner of AAA Baseball League in the World Series playoffs? That's the equivalent of what we do when JMU gets in the college football playoff. No, that's not true. All right. And Joe Klatt, we don't want Cinderellas. We want the best teams playing each other at the end. Okay. So Jeremiah Dickey, you can check what he said. In fact, he quote tweeted Danny Cannell. And so Matt Roan quote tweeted Jeremy Dickey. I serve JMU and every associated stakeholder. Like you in your place, we desire and deserve to compete at the very highest level, and we'll fight and position to ensure we do. All right. So that's the plan. But we need, someone to have a loud voice, whether it's PFT commenter. He may be the biggest one to do it. He would be a great voice, right? He's JMU grad, obviously Homer, but okay. It's as if, Josh Pate doesn't like his position at the SEC Media Days, all right, and having access there. So it is what it is. And so so the question is that's the first answer. I have questions. I have an answer. We need the answer for that. The answer is that the G5 needs a big name or 2 or 10 to start yapping it up and saying why they deserve to be in the playoff, because it's every day on ESPN. It's every day on CBS. It's every day on Fox. They don't need it. Portnoy's talking Michigan. Finebaum's talking SEC. Cannell's talking Florida State. Pate's talking SEC and Big Ten. Joe Klatt's talking Big Ten. Every day, all day. And no one is saying, hey, hold on a second. We belong too. And it's the bigger picture. It's not about the best 12 teams getting in there and winning. It's growing the sport. We want to grow the sport. So if we did bypass McElroy's idea and do 24, then you get all 10 conference champions in, and then you can fill in the rest with the at-large berth. And then if the G5 teams lose, you got a 16-team field filled with Power 4 teams, what they want anyways. So you're going to need some voices that are going to have to come out and have to compete with the Paul Finebaums on First Take if they allow them on there. In fact, that's what some of these SIDs should be doing, is getting the ADs who are good at debating. Is not easy on TV. It's a thing, especially if they are remote. That's not easy too. There may be a 3 or 4 second delay. It is what it is. But you need some voices out there. All right. I do the best I can, but I got 2,800 subscribers. No one paying attention except the faithful listeners here. I appreciate them, but I'm not nearly as big a voice as some of those other guys. And the other guys are winning right now. The other guys are winning. Although Greg McElroy came out with that, not the worst of all ideas. All right. That's why I had on the title, not bad. It may not be great, but it's not bad. All right. To guarantee the G5 getting in. All right. Now a 24-team playoff with all 10 conference champions is better, because then everybody gets in. And then the P4 guys win because you're getting all their teams in, the teams that belong anyway. And they all get an easy bowl game and a win at home over G5, or at least we think. I'm sure every time the Sun Belt team goes on the road, those Power 4 teams think they're going to win, right? I mean, Virginia Tech was bad this year. Holy cow, Old Dominion made them look bad. All right. Virginia Tech played better against Miami than they did against Old Dominion. All right. May have had a new coach by then. That coach may have been fired by then, but they were bad. They were really bad. So that's the first thing, is that you need a spokesperson or people to keep the G5 saying, we belong. It's not just about us suing you to make sure we belong. All right. Then you do need a plan. Someone's got to come up with a plan, whether it is the 24-game playoff, the 16-game playoff. I think 16 is enough. The problem is with the 14-game plan. With the 24-game plan. Do you cut out, because that's a lot of football? All of a sudden, you may be playing more football than the NFL, which is ridiculous. Do you take out the conference championship games? That's where, because that could be overkill. Now you're just playing for seeding, and you don't have to really worry about. Although with Duke, I guess at a 24 team championship. The ACC championship is going to get in. So Duke would get in. Would Virginia have gotten in? That's the only thing. Would Virginia have gotten in at large berth? So those are some details to work out. But that's what I would be. Those are the two things that I want. Someone or some people need to be a spokesperson for the G5. That's A. And then B, those people have to have, it can't just be one plan. It's got to be a couple of plans. And then maybe you merge the plans together. All right. Kind of like, the AFL was always going to merge with the NFL. And so was the ABA. The ABA went into business to eventually merge with the NBA is what happened. And so let's see if, we could figure out a process here that, it's never going to be perfect. I mean, you got to start with the transfer portal. You got to start with NIL. You got to start with, are you paying the teams if you take a player? How often can you do that? All kinds of things going on with that. You need some guardrails. We don't have any of that at all. In the NCAA tournament, people are, well, I guess they won't be anymore, but they were hitting the portal and you're getting ready to play in the tournament. What are we doing? Because that's when they had to go in, as if the people making that time didn't realize it at the time. So those are the two things that I think we need to discuss, is that you need to have some people, hopefully it's a group of people, be spoken out on the G5. And Herd Bros, I don't know who that is. Let me see here. Herd Bros is really good at it. Stuart Mandel has been pretty good at it. All right. Herd Bros, probably should find out his name, but the Herd Bros does a pretty good job. All right. He's very much that spokesperson, but he doesn't have a big outlet outside of what I'm seeing on X/Twitter. That's the only thing. So you need some spokespeople, and then you need an idea. You can't just say, well, we're waiting for the SEC and the Big Ten to pull away so they can have their own thing, which is what they're going to do anyways. That's the other idea. If you can keep, and the thing is, you got to keep some schools in the ACC and the Big 12. Let the Big Ten and the SEC do their thing. We'll take everybody else. I think there's more money for that. People think there's money for a G5. I don't think so. I think if you do the SEC and the Big Ten over there, and they'll get their money, that's fine. But the rest of the country will have the other playoffs. And I think that could be just as popular, if not even more popular, because the level of play will be closer and could be much more exciting than seeing either a defensive battle or an offensive explosion with one team getting blown out compared to the others. That's what I think. What do you guys think? All right. I want to wish everybody a happy or Merry Christmas. We finished Hanukkah, I guess, on Sunday night. And I only know that because the lights on the menorah were filled up. So I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We will have another episode on Thursday. And then I'm going to do, I guess I have a little bit of time of a crossover or a layover, I should say, Christmas morning. So we'll see who's up as I'm eating my Garrett's popcorn, caramel popcorn. I'm going to get the biggest bag and we'll see how much I have left. For the Schultz Christmas double feature, I usually hit 2 movies for the price of 1. Why not? And I want to bring back some holiday cheer to Jim Beam. So we'll see how much caramel corn I have left. All right. Again, thank you so much. It's been a fantastic year for the Sun Belt, for Locked On and the Sun Belt for that fact of the matter, right? I mean, played for a college baseball championship. That's amazing. And we just had JMU in the college football playoff as well. Very, very cool. And Troy got to the NCAA tournament. Pretty cool as well with that. All right. I will say one thing. It's amazing. I won't go into too many details, but I didn't start really trying again with this until the numbers started pointing upward. And it all started off with Charles Huff coming on. And then so Southern Miss and Marshall fans went back at it. And then I started talking about Southern Miss baseball. They were in trouble. Then they went on a 17-game winning streak and got into the NCAA tournament. And then we had the whole Texas State La Tech thing that kicked in. And then we were in football where we've been rock and rolling since. So June and July were big months. And then again, we've had a record amount. It's amazing. 3.5. Again, we doubled from 2023 to 2024, and we're at 3.5 times what 2024 was here in 2025. And we're going to go over 6 figures in views for the first time ever in a month. Now, again, that doesn't measure to what some of the other guys said. That may not even be 10% of what my guy Matt Moscona is doing with Locked On LSU, but that's a different ballgame. All right. And we understand that. I'm just proud of what we've done here. All right. So again, I am traveling on Christmas. We'll probably have an episode on Christmas, and then I'll do a little live thing, see who's up with me as I'm traveling back to Louisville. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. You've been watching Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve, and we'll talk to you again on Christmas.